I'm ready to smash and burn.
No quarter. I am going to be uncomfortable and all over you from start to finish.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Outside of the Box. And, we've been seeing a lot of really strong performances this season during World Championship VII. And Quantum, who's come back from a couple of years being away from BattleBots, certainly is one of those. So I have James Cooper with me today, and I'm really excited to talk about Quantum.
Yeah, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure being on your show, and thank you very much for having us. Fortunately, Grant's not feeling too good at the moment, so he's not with me, so just me today.
No worries at all. I'm sure we'll be able to talk about everything. So I kind of like to rewind a little bit, especially because this is the first time of having you on the show. So we haven't talked about, a lot of the stuff that I normally would have. And, one of those things is kind of going back to 2019 when you first came into BattleBots, because, for me, even though you had a 3-3 record that season, I saw a lot of promise in the robot. You did KO Valkyrie, which is not easy to do, and kind of lost the tooth in the process of doing that and still managed to get the win. So, I think I always saw Quantum as a robot with a lot of potential. You just don't see crushers being able to get the bite that you can and really get into the internals of the other robot. So, let's kind of talk a little bit about that season and what you saw that season that kind of, drove you to make some improvements.
So I think going a bit further back. So I don't know if you've heard of Spectre, but that was our first heavyweight as a family. Myself, my brother, and my dad working together. Obviously, we're the team behind Robot Wars, so we were never allowed to compete on there. Grant's been to BattleBots with John, with Beta. He was heavily involved with that, and I've helped out with a few teams, but it's not the same as kind of having your own thing. So King of Bots came along and invited us to take part, and we thought, this is our opportunity to do this. And Razor was a huge inspiration for me in particular in getting into engineering. Like, I think without seeing Robot Wars and the early BattleBots, I don't think I would have been an engineer. So the brute force of a crusher is something that we always liked. But the secondary reason for going for a crusher was that we knew that if we turned up to this brand new event and the arena wasn't very good, a crusher would be the last likely robot to get banned. So if you turn up and there's no polycarbonate, then all the spinners are gone and probably the flippers and the axes and stuff. But ultimately, to ban the crusher, you have to have the worst possible outcome. So it was one of those things where you go, Megabyte's going there. Are they going to have a arena good enough? If we design a Spectre, a crusher, we're not going to get kicked out, not for a while, unless we go and say, "Oh no, this really isn't safe." But and I think we sort of caught ourselves by surprise back then, because obviously we had our heads down. We just sort of went, we've got however many months to create our first robot. It was just head down, design it, no compromise. What's the best thing that we can make with no limitation on it? Custom motors, custom hydraulics, custom everything. Like, how do we make this the best crusher that we possibly can? Having no kind of concept of, is this going to be competitive? So when we turned up and it did really well, and we went to King of Bots a few times and continued to perform quite well. And we always felt like our big ace up our sleeve was our attention to detail with the front end. We were the only people surface grinding the fronts, and nobody else was getting like precision front ends. And King of Bots Arena is super flat. So we knew that any robot that we went in the arena with, we just go charge straight into them, and it's kind of game over. So, which was great. And then we came to BattleBots thinking that concept would work, and the floor is different to King of Bots. You got people like Uppercut that have been in there, and Tombstone, and the arena's not, it's flat, and And so we had our perfectly ground front edges at BattleBots thinking, yeah, this is it. And yeah, we just got caught up so much, and we couldn't drive the way that we wanted to drive. You always try to consider, oh, I've got to get around that bit. There's a seam in the floor, and if I start on the red square, then I know I'm going to like come off a lip, so I need to get off that lip quicker than they get to us. And so it was. We did okay. It was the first time a crusher had sort of been at BattleBots. I mean, we've got Kraken, which was awesome, but like the first sort of hydraulic crusher, so it was really nice to kind of go, this is what we're about, and show off some of the generative design and kind of what we feel we need to do to push the hydraulic crusher to make it competitive. But when we heard they were coming back with a new arena floor, we were like, we're gonna like we I think that we'll really jump up the rankings here because nobody's prepared for a flat floor, whereas that's all we've prepared for over in King of Bots. We know how this thing works on a flat floor. Don't change anything on the robot, just get it, work on a few bits. But when we come back and there's a flat floor, we'll catch people by surprise then. And then COVID happened, and we've missed out for like 3 seasons and come back, and now everybody's got super sharp fronts. And so it was I was like, damn! Finally, we'd got that season after COVID. But yeah, it was really good to be there in 2019 because I think Quantum looked quite different to most robots, and so it was quite nice to come along and show what we do, and it's as much a personal challenge to ourselves to just try and design and make something. And then when you arrive and you reveal your body of work to everybody, and you go around and you see what everybody else is creating, and you take inspiration from there, and you're learning the lessons, and I can see how they design that, but I can see what they're thinking, what they're doing, and maybe it's something that we just didn't think about, or maybe it's something that we did, but we went about it a different way. And I really enjoy that challenge. But from our record, our 3-3, I always look back at those fights and go, we could have won more, we could have lost more. And a hydraulic crusher well, Quantum in particular is a robot where you look at it and there isn't a robot out there that you could say we don't stand a chance against. But at the same vein, any spinner is dangerous to us, any axe robot's dangerous to us. And that you look at all of our fights and go, that was a moment where we could have lost it. The Valkyrie fight, they were upside down and coming onto the head, and like that could have just cleaved the head straight off, but it didn't. It just didn't quite touch it. So I never look at records and go, "Oh yeah, that was a good season. I'm really not interested in that."
Yeah, it doesn't always tell the full story of what happened.
Yeah.
I'm curious though, like having those couple of years off, do you feel that was more of a advantage or disadvantage? Because, yes, like you have maybe extra time because you're not having to, be competing over here or anything like that, but then you're kind of missing out on the experience of going and like seeing what everybody else is doing. So, how do you think that was for you?
I think having missed those seasons, Grant and I are really focused people, and when we're hyper competitive people. So when there's a challenge and we know that challenge is happening, then we're pretty ruthless competitors. But as soon as that competition's done, we have to get away from it because it's too much. We have families. We've got we have to. I enjoy sailing. I enjoy art and stuff. I have to get into those worlds then and enjoy those. And then when you hear the whispers of BattleBots coming back, it's going to be in 3 months' time. You start to go, okay, right, I'm listen a little bit, and then you start to hear some solid. Right, this one BattleBots on. And then it's like, right, deadly focus on Quantum. How do we make Quantum as ruthless as possible? Because it's so it takes so much to produce the machine, and to I mean all teams will experience it. You'll hear that ramp of the competition's happening. Okay, preparation, preparation, preparation. You're there, you're at the event, you've done it, and then it's just off a cliff at the other end because it's taken so much out of you to do it. Um, and I find I have to step away once I've got to the end of an event. I have to enjoy sailing. I have to enjoy my artwork. I have to enjoy, I don't know, what other things there are. And then I know that when I get back to BattleBots, I'll be fresh. We'll be on our A game, and what we produce won't be like a labored approach. It'll be an energetic, focused approach. But
Did
yeah, I think we missed out on a few years of development, obviously.
Right. Yeah. And I was going to say, like, when you did, come back and you're there in Vegas and you're at the arena and you're seeing, everybody else's tables set up, was there anything major that, like, surprised you in terms of what some of the other teams are doing now as opposed to a couple of seasons ago? Because even for me as a fan watching it, it just amazes me how far like some teams have come that have been around since that time, or even like some of the new designs and what people are doing with those.
Yeah, and I think it's one thing that was surprising at BattleBots was 50 teams, and they were all good teams. There wasn't and I guess that was highlighted when you got your schedule. You go, oh, that's tricky. But then you go, well, there's nobody else to pick from. Like there aren't any duff bots that you can just go, okay, let's just go and have a practice fight. Um, you look on paper and people said, oh, Quantum should easily beat Shredderator. And we were lucky that we did, but we only had to let them get up to speed once and it would have been completely different. So it's it looked dominant because we have that's the way Quantum fights. It has to be on them all the time. Um, but from like a surprising thing, Grant and I are really good at forward thinking and seeing where things are going. We're quite that's something that I enjoy, and you can kind of see where BattleBots go, where the sport's going, and you can see it sort of 4 or 5 years in advance of like the technology or the things that people are doing, and you. So it is about where you would expect, and I think there's going to be big changes over the next couple of years. So, but it for us coming back this time, it was okay. Let's do the best that we can, but let's put the feelers out. We don't know if we're still relevant in this sport. We could just get whitewashed by anything now, and it does make you go like we want to be in it to win it. We want to be competitive, but we don't want to change who we are to do that. Like the spinners are amazing, but it's not a game that we particularly are enticed by. We enjoy doing something a little bit left field, and that's kind of the challenge for us. So this BattleBots was to go: are we still relevant in this sport? Is Quantum just that looks pretty, but let's look forward to seeing the spinners going, or let's look forward to seeing Hydra flipping, and so this was a bit of a are we on the right lines here? Should we continue with BattleBots, or is this really the end of the line for us?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that I love this season is that there are so many bots that, maybe didn't have the best record or, things like that in the past that are just dominant in this season. And I think that that's really great to see because, you're seeing the differences in like changes that people have made in level of preparation and things like that, and of course all of that comes into play. I'm also curious about another couple of things that have changed since 2019. One of those was I ask a lot of people about the shelf just because a lot of people don't like the shelf, but as a crusher, do you like it? Do you not like it? Is it kind of a non-issue for you?
I think Grant hit the nail on the head in a previous interview, and that once you're in the arena, you just don't see it, and you just solely. We don't look at Quantum. We're looking at the other robots the whole time, and you get like Quantum in your peripheral, and you're like aligning the jaw, trying to get that to the right height. So, at no point do you ever really notice the shelf until you bump into it to go, oh, get out of the way. We're trying to get to somebody here. So it's yeah, I kind of get that they're putting something in there. I think it harms horizontals more than anybody. I think there's very few things that you can add to the arena that levels the playing field. I think it exacerbates it more. Yeah, it's one of those things where you look at the most competitive way to win, and by adding a shelf, by adding XYZ, that seems more the way to win. So but hopefully it makes some interesting stuff for TV. I don't know.
Sure, it can. It definitely has at some points in time. I'm also curious about, I don't necessarily think a lot of the rule changes were things that would directly impact Quantum as much as maybe some other robots, but there were a lot of significant rule changes this year as opposed to years past.
There
Like
were a few that impacted like Quantum directly. It's things like the grappling roll and corralling roll. So having to move away a square section after 20 seconds of biting the opponent. Obviously, you can't have it so spinners have to stop spinning for a second before they can hit you again. They'll just come straight back at you. So that one feels a bit like hold on a minute. But I understand from a TV show, you don't want to just see Quantum or Kraken or any of the grapper bots just bite hold of them and then just hold them against the wall and then just control the whole match in that way. And so we don't really complain about that because. And the same with the pinning limits. They're now 20 seconds instead of 30. We never use the 20 seconds up because it seems like a long, long time during a battle when you're driving. Like I watched the footage back and it looks way faster than when you're there for some reason. But during the battle, 5 seconds seems like quite a long time. You'll very rarely see Quantum bite anything for longer than 5 or 10 seconds because it's just wasting time unless you're hanging on to somebody. So if you're fighting end game and you've bitten hold of them, it's just running down the clock otherwise, unless it's you really want to let go and get the next bite in to get something else. The same with the spinner. You need to hit them, then you need to get back up spin, and you need to get them again. It's useless just doing one bite. That doesn't aid. It's not good for us as well. So yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it's been interesting. I think that a lot of that is coming into play more and more as the episodes go on. Obviously more fights are going to lead to kind of more of that. And speaking of the fights, I definitely want to talk about those. So I know that you had mentioned the Shredderator fight, and yes, I think that given their design and being what I like to call cookie shaped. They are uniquely designed to fit very well inside of Quantum's mouth.
But you could say that about Endgame, about Minotaur. They're all A-shaped robot that fits in Quantum's mouth currently.
True.
So you accept that if you stop their weapon, it's going to be pretty one-sided.
Yes.
But if you don't stop the weapon, it's got to be very one-sided the other way as well.
Right, exactly. But yeah, I mean, like you said, staying on them was really key in that because their whole, weapon is the ability to spin up, and if you don't let them do that, then it's pretty hard for them to do anything. I was very impressed with the ability of the teeth to penetrate into the top shell, which I would think that they would have. I know a lot of teams tend to armor up more to prepare for that. I'm not sure if they did, but kind of take me through that fight a little bit, and do you feel like you fully did what you set out to achieve in that match?
Yeah, I mean it's Shredderators. For some reason, they've not had a lot of luck in BattleBots. I don't know why, but we've seen them in China, and we know when they go, they really go pretty hard. So we knew that we had to be on them. But one thing that was really disappointing from 2019 was our first fight. This was a big reveal of Quantum, first fight of a hydraulic crusher in BattleBots in God knows how many years. Okay, let's go. And then the robots get stuck together, and you're like, oh, is this what we worked for? Like this isn't how Quantum's supposed to be seen. At the time, we didn't know why they stuck together. You know, we'd never seen it before with Spectre, so there was something weird going on. But there was a real like we've worked so hard on this robot to show it to people, and that's what we have to show for it, that battle. So we were very conscious coming into this season when people have said, "Oh, you need to change your tooth profile. You need to lubricate them. You need to taper them." And we know what works, what doesn't. Um, so we were very conscious not to bite through any AR protection, and we didn't know what they had under there. So we said, let's just nip hold of them, even if just for the battle we don't bite through them. Let's just take that on the chin, and we'll at least we'll get a fight out of the robot. They're not going to get stuck together. And after about 4 bites, it just felt like I never really heard the. You can hear Quantum going, and you hear the hydraulics and hear what it's doing. Like, it's never really struggled so far. Like I'm grabbing hold of them, and everything feels a bit spongy. So I don't think there's anything hard under there. So I just went for it, and the teeth just sank straight through. I was like, "Oh yeah, there's no AR under here." Yeah. From that moment on, it was just like, yeah, just go for it. Um, but yeah, we were very conscious of not getting stuck together because we want to put on a good show ultimately. And I think we were just lucky that the first bite, even though it wasn't that high powered, seemed to disable the disc. Either that or when they hit the wall, something happened. I'm not too sure, but yeah, I think we were breathing a sigh of relief when we saw that disc wasn't spinning because at that point, you know that it is more of just feeding a cookie and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What was interesting though is, going from that fight to then battling Gruff, who I think that, people that saw that first match were like, yes, Quantum really dominated, but Gruff is not Shredderator. Gruff is known for being a tank. They're very durable. They put extra stuff on there to try and avoid the bite, and that didn't work.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I wanted to kind of hear your perspective, why you think that it didn't
Yeah.
work.
I think we were looking at their chassis, and they seem to have two different chassis. One with very thick side armor, which clearly for Tombstone and spinners like that, and then they had a thinner one. We're like, okay, they're going to really armor up on top here. And they said that they had some special material that was going on the top of the robot. Um, and they were doing a lot of welding out the back. We didn't know what they were welding on. It wasn't until we saw them in the arena we were like, oh man, that's probably what we would have done if we had to fight Quantum. Was put something. We said before the fight, as long as they don't put a bar along their front arms, then it doesn't really matter. If we don't get through them, then we don't get through them. But as long as they don't put a bar there, then we're okay. And somehow we just seem to avoid it. And yeah, it just worked out well. The only thing I'd say is in hindsight, we should have gone for double teeth on there. As I watched the footage back, and the teeth went through really easily. It's I don't. They must have taken off some thick armor or something. I don't believe that they had the strongest setup on. I don't know why, but it's one of those weird things where people go, "Oh, you need to put AR armor on top for Quantum, or you need to put like really thick layer, put 4-inch thick plastic on there so then the tooth doesn't get through." And in all those situations, Quantum goes to full power and puts that force through your robot. Whereas the way we've thought, if we ever had to fight Kraken, we'd put the weakest armor on possible. So then no load goes to the robot. And then that way, and they have to hit something then internally to damage you. Otherwise, you're allowing them to bend your robot, and our robot wouldn't take that. Maybe other robots would, I don't know. But it's a really interesting strategy of going. You don't need to. You can put a million holes in a robot, and unless you actually hit something inside, it doesn't do anything unless they armor up well and their robot takes the load and starts to bend things and jam things up. So we've always thought that if we had to fight a crusher, put weak armor on, allow the teeth to go through, but just maybe put some space to it so it holds them back from vital components. But then so long as they don't put the load through your robot, as long as they're unable to do that, then you're okay.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like an interesting way to do it, but I can see how that would work. Now we obviously can't talk about, details regarding the fights that haven't been aired yet, but this time you knew ahead of time that you would be fighting Black Dragon and Emulsifier, who are both spinners, and something that's maybe a little bit more dangerous to Quantum. What was your thought process and preparation before, leading up to those fights, knowing that that's who you were going to have to face?
Granted, I didn't actually want to know who we were fighting, so we just looked at who the first person was, and then that was it. Then, because if we're thinking of if in hindsight we knew that we were fighting Emulsifier and Black Dragon, you'd be like, oh man, and you wouldn't be focused on Gruff. Yeah, and it's the biggest thing in BattleBots. When you're complacent, you make mistakes, and that's when the results don't go the way that you think you're going to go. So when we found out that we were fighting Shredderator first, it was like, we got a job on here. We need to. This could go terribly wrong if we don't focus and get this right. And then when we saw their little wedge attachment on the front, we're like, oh yeah, this could go bad. So when we did finally find out, I think somebody actually told us, "Oh, you haven't seen Adam Wrigley's robot, have you? That's pretty lethal." This before, I'm like, "Oh, geez, that looks pretty savage." um, and obviously, Black Dragon is something that I don't watch BattleBots religiously because I'm in the UK, so we don't get it here. But the picture in my mind is when they fought Minotaur, and it was a 3-minute slugfest, and they both just kept going, and it's really good, solid robot. It never dies. They keep hitting, really well driven. So you're just like, what, case of Rasa, it'll be what it'll be. But ultimately, I think Grant and I enjoy driving Quantum like you stole it, and when it goes into the arena, like, if it gets messed up, it gets messed up. But let's have some fun. Let's try and enjoy BattleBots rather than get stressed about fighting these robots. We know that the field's made up. Most people are spinners. You can rebrand them as a hammer saw or as a vert or as a whatever. They're all high kinetic energy weapons. They're all spinners who you've got to fight them. And I think it's daunting whoever you got to fight that's got a spinner on. But you can't be complacent with anybody either.
It is. And though, this year, I don't even necessarily think that that's as much of an issue as it has been in past seasons. Obviously we'll see how that plays out with everybody, but seeing a robot like Claw Viper just sheer domination, that I didn't even expect.
But you have to go, well, that's the level that Claw Viper have to get to make that robot competitive. Otherwise, and great respect to Charles, Overhaul's been working really well for a long time. It's reliable, it's robust, but it's not going to do what Claw Viper can do. And you have to forget what's been done in the past. How do we take it, not like a bit better version of Overhaul, but how do we go somewhere where people weren't expecting us to go? And they've done that with Claw Viper. It's amazing to see that thing going. But it's so, like, people just see Claw Viper zipping around and stuff, but they're probably the only people that have got brushless going beautifully, and they drive it really well. And that's the level that they've had to go to get a control bot competitive, and it's really looking good so far.
Do you think that, because somebody had mentioned this to me, and I'm like, well, that makes sense, but do you think that speed is possibly going to become the new ground game? Because for a while, everybody's been working on their forks and all of that, and now speedy robots seem to be doing very well.
Yeah, I think. So the ground game is the thing that's going to win. It's a flat floor, and any robot like a flipper, a crusher, or a control bot has to get under them, otherwise your weapon doesn't work. For a vert, if you don't get under them, you can't catch the edges, so you can't get those big impacts. So everybody really does rely on the ground game. So if you take it to an evolution, so everybody had a solid front, so that goes close to the floor. But then you get the people with the flappy fronts. Okay, so that now grinds against the floor. And then you get people with magnets, and we use springs in there and that starts planing the paint off the floor. Well, that's great. But then you start to get forks. So the narrower that point is on the floor, the better the contact with the floor will be, because you've only got one point to make sure it's on the floor. But now it's got to the point where everybody's got really accurate fronts. Everybody's got super sharp, super accurate. Everybody's perfectly on the floor. So now it becomes a game of, it's not about engineering now. It's more about, is your fork moving now? And the slower you can make your fork on the floor, the advantage, which is actually opposite to how you really want BattleBots. You want people to be on the limits of driving like Claw Viper is. But actually the ground game is causing robots to slow down, because if you move quickly, you're going to get your front damaged on the floor, or it'll vibrate and the other one will get under there. So actually the best strategy, sadly, is to sit on the spot and have your forks pointing at the opponent, or go super extreme the other way, like Claw Viper does. But can you keep that up for 3 minutes with endgame? I don't know. We'll see. Unfortunately, that's the thing for me. And we always go, oh, we need to do something about our ground game. But if it means slowing Quantum down, you're like, we're not going to enjoy that. We want it as it's about. Like, we enjoy driving it in its horizontal weapon setup, because then we don't worry about the floor then, and we can skid it and drift and do all sorts of fun. And whereas if we're fighting a Forks robot, you've got to go slow, because otherwise our front's going to vibrate and they'll get underneath, and well, you just sit and duck then. So it's it's going to be very interesting how the sport's going to go over the next few years, and how maybe production might want to alter the rules to see how they can spice things up.
Yeah, I'm sure that is something that they'll be thinking about. And then I did want to ask, obviously, like, we're still really in the thick of things with World Championship VII, but as things go with the TV production, that's airing, but it seems like we're not too far off from potentially the World
Season
Championship
8.
VIII. Is that something that you're planning for at this point? Now that you've come back, do you plan on coming back again?
I think as the first two fights have shown, that it was something after those two fights when people started coming up to us and going, oh, Quantum's quite a nasty robot, actually. You're like, oh, actually, maybe we're not too far behind the curve. So we're like, with two fights in, we're really pleased with the performance, and it's given us a bit of confidence to go, well, actually, maybe there is a place in BattleBots for Quantum. Yeah, maybe there is a place for a crusher that's isn't there to be a show pony. It's there to eat robots and perform well. We'd never turn up if we were just cannon fodder. So, but we know that there's quite a few shortcomings in the robots, where win or lose, we never content people. We would never take the same Quantum back to BattleBots, because that sort of, it doesn't feel like it would be. I wouldn't really be motivated by that, I don't think. So hydraulic system is one area where we go, it's a really quick hydraulic system, but it feels like an eternity when you're trying to bite hold of somebody who's running away. When there's a spinner on the loose, it'd be like, quick, go bite them, but they just slip out your jaws and stuff. A classic one was with Donald Hudson's Lockjaw, and we lost that one quite badly. And there's a couple of moments where you just see him like slip through the jaw, and you're like, oh man, we need to speed these up. So we came up with a whole new concept for the hydraulic system, which quite exciting. So I think we'd want to do that. Yeah, so there's a few areas where we go, this is going to require a complete start from scratch again. So there'll be, I'm sure, if we come back to BattleBots again, it'll be a whole new quantum.
There's definitely nothing wrong with that. I mean, that seems to be the case for a lot of robots anymore. Just completely revamping. Still looking, very, very much the same or similar on the outside, but just a lot of the internals, because every year people do different things and are trying to kind of step their game up. So everybody kind of has to follow suit.
There's always a knock-on effect as well. Where you go, okay, we'll just change the way we mount the pump, and that changes the internal chassis. No, we've got to start again. So, but one good argument is: do you go brushless on the drive? Do you go brushless on the weapon? For us, we're really pleased with the motors that we've created with Lynch. So it's one of those things where you could save a load of weight, but then what would we do with the weight? I'm not really interested in putting it into armor, because so we take the first hit, well, then we're only going to get smashed up. If we get hit by a spinner, we're smashed up. So there's no point trying. So if anything, I'm tempted to go lighter on the armor, especially on the front for verts, because if they hit the robot, then it's game over anyway. So why bother having anything that can try and absorb it? We'd probably better focus using that weight for like a snapshot hydraulic system. So then on the rare opportunity that we do get, we can get them. That would actually have performance, whereas changing our Armux front from like 4 mil to 6 mil would just mean that we fly higher in the air when they hit us. So, and it'd just be even more difficult to repair the front end after a battle. So what's the point of that? So it's always interesting playing that game of where do we spend the weight? What's going to bring performance to the machine? But we know that we go about it in a different way. That if we take a robot doesn't take it, so it's game over if it does.
Well, I'm really excited to see, what's to come, both in the current season, as well as, next season, with what you would potentially bring for that. Because I think Quantum's great, and it's a great design, and I think this season is showing really how effective it can be. And I think that's amazing. So looking forward to
thank
that.
you. Yeah, it's. I always look forward to the challenge, but your Quantum, as I said, is a robot that you can beat any robot with, but you can also lose to any robot, and that keeps us on our toes. I enjoy that challenge of trying to make something competitive. And people talk about your previous records and stuff like none of that matters. And if you get through to the round of 32 and they say, oh, you had a good record or a bad record, none of it matters. The only thing that matters is that one robot in front of you. Yeah, all the statistics that you can throw at it don't matter right now. They're not going to help you.
And realistically, most years, I mean, it's not the same robot. In some cases, not at all. It might have the same name and it might look the same on the outside, but it's really not. So I always like to say, you can't say, oh, this is going to perform this way based off of what happened last year. You don't know. You never know.
And as I said, the Valkyrie one's a classic one where we could have got cleaved in half really bad when they flipped upside down. But the same for the Tombstone one, we lost really quick. We watch the footage back all the time going, how can we change the geometry of the robot to make sure that that never happens again? We've got all sorts of ideas and things that we've changed already, but things where you go, how do we make sure that doesn't happen again? Because that match could have gone very differently had that not happened. But yeah, all the theories are great until you get inside the arena and they all go to pot then. But
yes.
there's a lot of robots as well that you look at and go, oh, they've yet to show their colours. How Cobalt hasn't won the giant nuts so far. Fingers crossed for them this season, because the producers always say, who do you think's going to win? And for me, it's always, I don't see how Cobalt it's not going to win this, but every year so far, yeah, have not really lived up to the potential that you know is in that machine.
Yes, I have a whole list of robots that I'm like, how haven't they won a giant nut by now? And so,
Yeah,
we'll see, hopefully.
yeah,
But it's definitely it's been an exciting season. I think it's shaping up to be one of the best seasons of BattleBots that there has been. Just the quality of the fights and things like that, I think, are just amazing. And I'm sure
awesome.
fans are really excited to see what happens.
Did you get to go to filming? Did you?
I did get to go to
Nice.
filming. Only so it's a funny experience for me because I was there for basically for the tournaments, that portion of
Nice.
things. So I know what happens in the future, but I didn't see
Yeah.
any of these fight nights. So this is
Oh,
this is
that's
all
good.
new
Yeah.
to me. So it's
Awesome.
it's like interesting to see the future and then see
Yeah.
what happened that led up to that.
Yeah. So, yeah. Oh, very good. Cool. What do you got there for the main bit? So.
Yes, I got to be there for the real exciting stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think everybody's gonna love it. It's gonna be great. But obviously there's plenty of season to go. So everybody that watches the show, please make sure that you keep watching because there's gonna be so much more to talk about. But I'm thrilled to have had you on the show, James. And I'm sure that people are going to really enjoy this episode, because Quantum is getting people to stand up and take notice.
Yeah. Thank you. And we've had such a good response from people. It's been so lovely, sort of seeing people going. Actually, there's harking back to the Razor days and things like that. And it's really nice that people are interested in what we're doing and what BattleBots is up to. It was BattleBots and Robot Wars that got me into engineering, so it's really nice to be a part of the people that hopefully do something for the next generation. At the end of BattleBots filming, my family flew over and Grant's family flew over, and we did one fight on the last day to show them what we do. And they, like, my two girls are 5 years old, and they walked through the tunnel with us, giving everybody high fives. And then you kind of see this big battle box, and you got Quantum there, and it's a really amazing experience to give these people. So yeah, it's a real honor to be able to do it.
That's awesome. And that's really like that's what it's all about, for me, is just like the experience of the community and having kids get to, see these things. Hopefully that's something that they'll want to be interested in someday. But yeah, it's just great.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.